I ask, what is the social responsibility of these companies? Because if in the modern age we are defined not morally or religious, but by our habits of consumption, and from these presentations you have told us that you are now asking the customers what they want to buy. So, and the customers themselves are looking into brands to know what they personally are. So there's this cycle where no one knows what they are really. The companies don't know what the customers want to buy. The customers don't know themselves. They ask the companies what they are. And I have not seen any kind of moral, social responsibility in all these. You have talked about manipulation. You have called it choreography. I can call it manipulation. You have talked about engagement. You are just evangelizing, hiring evangelizers, which is a very manipulative way of spreading ideas. Well, where socially and humanly and what doesn't these companies have the responsibility to think about society, about the role of people?
May I start? Yeah. First off, you've got to understand that every tool we have on the planet, whether it be a social media tool, a software platform, a hammer, a shovel, anything we have in the tool can be abused. And I agree with you. The good thing about working with the companies here, and I've worked with Sugar CRM and I've worked with Lithium, is there is no question in my mind that these organizations are trying to provide what they do for something good, not something forced. But as always, with anything, if you wish to abuse it, you can. What I think these organizations are doing, though, is they're removing some of the technology challenges. Before, you spent so much time with the technology and trying to get the bits and pieces, you had no time to think about, is it ethically practical? I come from Germany. I am American, but I've lived in Germany. In Germany, they've taken the strictest interpretation of the new EU law about data protection, and they've implemented it there. If you steal data, you go to jail. If you give data away without permission, you go to jail. If you use the data incorrectly, you go to jail. But I think you're right, this has nothing to do about that. What I talk about is the fact that people are willing to exchange something for value. It is human nature. And when it comes to ethics, there's an excellent example, and that comes from the Walt Disney Company. Walt Disney, who are Walt Disney's customers? The parents, not the children. They actually spend more time in their ethics committees talking about how do we communicate or how do we give messages to groups of children without violating, going one-to-one to them with a personal offer to buy or purchase, and how do we make sure that we use what we do and focus it on the parents, where we can know that the parents have the right and the smarts and are old enough to make the decision of whether they're going to do with this. So I think the ethics are actually playing a big role. Every major bank I know, good example is Banco Santander. They have a huge ethics committee that talks about what they're going to do with this, because they realize that at the end of the day, they want their customers to love them for a long time, and it's these early decisions with the technology that are going to play a difference. I think the vendors here are actually helping us by removing some of the technical things and make it easy for us to have that ethical conversation. But ethics absolutely plays a role in everything we do.
Se eu pudesse acrescentar mais uma coisa, não sei se teve a oportunidade de ver a minha apresentação. Falamos aqui de várias ferramentas, algumas mais avançadas, num outro nível, que é o caso do Lithium, ou Sugar CRM, mas o Facebook, o Twitter, eu dei vários exemplos ali de responsabilidade social, provocaram revoluções, mudaram o norte de África. E o interessante é que essas empresas se preocuparam em manter canais abertos. Vocês devem ter acompanhado, sistematicamente o governo tentava fechar todos os canais, tentava bloquear a internet nesses países, e as pessoas se juntavam através dessas ferramentas e outras ferramentas disponíveis hoje no mercado para criar caminhos, túneis diretos, onde as pessoas continuavam mandando informação. Ou seja, essa ideia de participação, de criar uma ferramenta social, derrubou países. Imagina, ajudou a derrubar pelo menos. Não foi isso que, obviamente, que provocou, mas foi a cola pelo menos daquelas comunidades que permitiu coordenar e agir. Né? E isso teve um papel muito importante de todas as empresas, criando condições para que todo esse sistema continuasse a funcionar, mesmo sendo bloqueado pelos países, pelos governos.
Exatamente nesse exemplo do Norte de África, essas revoluções que foram ajudadas pelo Facebook e pelo Twitter. Imagino que o Facebook e o Twitter conseguiram com essas revoluções tempo de antena grátis, constantemente, estavam sempre a ser assinalados nos jornais. E foi por isso que foi permitido. Foi por isso que o permitiram. Essa ética de dizer que o Facebook e o Twitter fizeram alguma coisa pela revolução, eles estavam lá e por acaso foi utilizado, mas se houvesse qualquer outra coisa qualquer interesse governamental americano no Norte da África, contrária a essa revolução, as coisas não teriam acontecido. Eu acho que...
É difícil saber porque não houve interesse, pelo contrário, de abrir isso aqui como um canal. Né? Mas, por exemplo, tem outros exemplos onde, por exemplo, na China, às vezes bloqueiam algum e o Google aceita essa situação. Esse que é o ponto que quer tocar provavelmente. Né? Mesmo nesse caso daí, né, essas empresas têm muita preocupação por causa que, da mesma maneira que tem uma grande comunidade, essa comunidade pode se montar, mas ela pode se desmontar também muito rapidamente. Não é só uma questão de antena, porque a antena deles é feita pelos próprios utilizadores. Né? A preocupação deles é sobreviver criando essas condições, né, moral e ética no caso específico daquilo, senão também eles desmontam do dia para o outro.
Antes de continuar, queria só dar uma informação, é que avisar que à tarde vão existir workshops, portanto, desse encontro, da Lithium Social CRM, da Sugar, demos e cases da DRI e da Talent também, sobre integração de dados, qualidade de dados e migração. As pessoas interessadas devem estar aqui entre as 14h30 e as 15 horas. Mais perguntas? Mais uma pergunta?
Foi aqui a presença aqui presente que me inspirou para esta pergunta. Eu trabalhei em publicidade com o Small e a pergunta vai um bocadinho daí. É interessante esta abordagem às redes sociais e ao social enquanto ferramenta de colocar as empresas à conversa com o consumidor. Mas aquilo que aqui vemos é quase que um intrincheiramento. De um lado estão os marketeers com as suas posturas tradicionais e a fazer estratégias a 3 anos e campanhas de publicidade na televisão, nos intervalos, onde está toda a gente no Facebook e a twittar e a ver vídeos do YouTube e na box a ver a série que deu ontem que eu não vi. Portanto, enfim, é uma verdade que efetivamente a publicidade tradicional estará em queda. É óbvio que está toda a gente conectada nas ferramentas sociais. A questão é, não há integração, a publicidade morreu e ainda ninguém falou disso, ou continua a ser uma forma de construir marca, de criar awareness, que não está a ser integrada nas ferramentas sociais. Eu parece-me que se está a caminhar para 2 religiões, a religião um bocado cristalizada, é verdade, do marketing tradicional, e a religião agora mais ativa da social media, quando eventualmente aquilo que se deveria estar também a pensar é na integração destas duas posturas, considerando o social também um canal, porque apesar de ser uma realidade, enfim, por si só, é também um canal, mas não há neste tipo de integração. É porque se acredita que a publicidade e o marketing tradicional vai morrer, ou porque ainda não se parou para pensar como é que pode haver esta integração.
Someone needs to translate because I lost after the second sentence. 2 sentences was good, then I lost.
Okay, I'll try to rephrase it. There's a lot of tension between normal, advertising and marketing, and the new media, and social media. And what she's asking is that they can coexist, or this tension will dilute in time. How it will evolve this idea of this fight? Let's say between the normal advertisement market, industry, sorry, market doesn't exist, and social media.
Microphone on?
Yes.
Great. I think that we cannot give the answer for that question. The answer is given by the audience which is listening to these messages. And what we see is just a trend, and this is one of the figures I showed, that more and more people are not considering the advertising, the traditional advertising as we saw it so far, that other channels, but also other media are having much more relevance today and perhaps also in the future. I think an important point is that what also Tom said at the very beginning. Sometimes we look at the situation from our own point of view. I'm at the age of 52 looking at something which is young new media, which is used by my sons. I have another view to that. But my sons are the future customers. So how they recognize advertising, how they make buying decisions, that is probably as relevant as I am, because we represent different market segments.
Market segments is okay.
I'm really scared to use the word now.
The market segments
because we have to consider the fact that also in the future there is a lot of people which will be influenced by traditional advertising, but also other people which will have more tendency to use the social media. The question is what happens with the people in between. To give you an example, in Switzerland, I recently saw this, the average expenditure for a year by person is around 1,000 Swiss francs. The market segment of the 55 years old and older has an average expenditure of 1,800 Swiss francs, nearly the double. So this gives an indication that even if you look at the entire social media environment, that we don't have to leave out some ages or sectors with a specific age, because they have converted from traditional thinking and traditional buying decisions and even buying processes to new ones. So probably everything is a little bit in a movement right now, but I think it will be, my personal view is it will be a coexistence of it, but the, let's say the importance of the traditional advertising will be reduced because the traditional channels are not more used as they were 10 or 20 years ago.
One of the things I noticed, you have to make a distinction between creativity and advertising. And I've worked with some advertising agencies that have fantastic creative. And that will continue to be valid because 80% of our decisions we make as human beings are emotional or social. And creative can help support that, regardless of the channel, regardless if it's the sales force talking on the telephone or setting up for the next touch point, regardless of it's the community. There is a problem with advertising agencies that say the answer is advertising. Now, what was the question? To go back to one thing you may be having a trouble with internally, though, there's still above-the-line departments, advertising, PR. There may be marketing departments. There may be social media departments. There's still some organizations, if you don't have that, that's fantastic if it's all come together. But many of you may still have different hierarchies of departments. You know, one department's looking at social media, but they have nothing to do with the sales department. So one of the things I can recommend is try this impact orientation. You don't need me or DRI to do it. It's very, very easy because it forces everybody to think from the customer's perspective, and it starts breaking down some of those barriers. I do think there will be less, we don't know what to do, so let's just go through it at some more advertising, sort of marketing decisions. But advertising and these things do play a big role, but hopefully we'll do it in a little more coordinated fashion.
And it's something, I'll keep in English, sorry.
Yeah.
I think it's something that is transitional, as they're saying, because you have to keep testing, proving that the cost and effectiveness of these social media channels and the online advertisement is worth. And once it's worth, you will automatically start to increase that budget and reduce the other. I think you have to measure it, isn't it?
Let's switch to português.
Okay.
Uma coisa importante, eu vou falar do ponto de vista mais acadêmico, mais genérico. Toda nova tecnologia gera resistências. Isso aconteceu, tem vários, o carro quando foi introduzido. Eu vou dar um exemplo que eu adoro. Uma das maiores barreiras para a implementação do telégrafo nos Estados Unidos foi o Pony Express. O Pony Express, que era uma rede com os cavalos que distribuíam, todos já viram aqueles filmes, falavam no Pony Express. Eles falavam que no dia que começasse o telégrafo ia levar milhares de cavalos primeiro, a inanição, iam morrer cavalos, e depois as pessoas iam ficar desempregadas. Né? Então foi necessário muito lobby do pessoal do telégrafo, do Samuel Morse, para convencer o Estado americano a investir no telégrafo. Toda nova leva de tecnologia sempre tem muita resistência. Né? Essa dualidade que existe hoje em dia é a questão de um processo que no final vai se decidir. Se lembram antes, era o CD ou o mundo digital. Aí surgiu o iTunes, misturou tudo e hoje em dia ficou uma coisa no meio. Ou seja, esse é um processo que vai tomar algum tempo, o futuro ninguém sabe, né? É impossível prever o futuro. Como diz o grande Alan Kay, a gente tem que inventar esse futuro, né? Mas claramente os jovens compram hoje em dia uma revista, jogam a revista fora e ficam com o CD que vem colado. Quando compram a revista? Né? Ou seja, os jovens, meu filho tem 8 anos de idade e não vê televisão. Ele vê os programas dele diretamente no YouTube. Ele e todos os amigos dele. A minha filha não compra mais livro. Ela toma decisão a partir de Wikipedia, convive com Wikipedia, com papers científicos e tudo. Ou seja, nós ainda estamos vendo, como disse bem o Ivan, nós estamos vendo que nós temos 40, 50 anos, esse mundo é tudo muito complicado, mas a juventude já tomou essa decisão há muito tempo. Não tem a menor dúvida, os seus futuros clientes vão estar nesse social media, porque para eles é um meio de comunicação importante.
Eu tenho aqui uma questão que veio na rede, portanto caiu no site do DRI, né, do José Ramalho, não sei se ele está presente ou não, mas como abordar, a pergunta eu vou fazer em português, tá? Como abordar os comentários nas redes sociais, quer os negativos, quer os positivos. Devemos responder diretamente pelo mesmo meio ou encaminhá-lo para outros modos de comunicação, uma vez que pode gerar grandes comentários, tornando-se uma cascata que poderá não ser positiva.
How do you reply to comments in social media? Do you use the same channels?
No,
In a negative and positive way.
the negative and positive way. I mean, if you
Want to start?
this is an easy one.
There are some best practices around that. I think all companies, of course, don't like to see negativity on their products in the internet, or even worse, on the whole brand information. Nevertheless, it's very important to know that, because if something is not working with your product, or let's take that as an example, the discussion takes place somewhere in the internet and you don't know about it. The best thing you can do is that you know where it is and you can answer and intervene directly. If it is a very big problem. The best thing which can happen is definitely that your brand advocates are giving the answer. In any case, as a best practice, advice, if there is negativity on your own community, please leave it there. don't remove it, don't cancel it. As long as the wording is fine and no bad words are used, why that? If somebody in the room goes into a forum and sees only positive comments, he starts to think about, I think here something is fake. I don't trust it anymore. Because we know all that all the products in the world have somewhere a little defect, something has to be fixed, so somebody's not happy. So it augments your credibility of your own forum. So first step then, leave it there. Second step, give the community a chance, your brand advocates, to give an answer, to convert these people. We have a lot of these examples in the community of our customers. And third, if there is a direct intervention required from your side, then do it, and then decide if you want to use a private messaging, so taking the discussion away from the public discussion, or if you decide to leave it there, means providing an answer in a discussion thread, and do it there.
One of the other big things I've discovered is that there's the fear of what the customers will say. You can't stop that. You can only be sensible about making sure we understand it. The other fear is, oh my God, my staff has no idea how to respond. And that you can do through training, as a matter of fact. I think last year I talked to the audience here. There's a website with social media policies written where you can go and take a look at different examples and find something that suits your company's style. And so you can get some ideas of how to go about establishing a policy and training either a small group of people or a large group of people how they should go about managing the responses, and also what the escalation procedure should be if something looks like it's getting out of control. We all three have wonderful examples of how not to do it. Thank goodness none of them had to do with my consulting or their software. But there's some famous examples. But those two tricks, always acknowledge it, and also make sure you have people who are trained and it's clear to everyone what your policy is on answering. That's the two tricks I've discovered to really help people move forward.
Vou falar uma vez em português. Eu aprendi uma coisa com a Gal, aqui o Antônio. Quando nós lançamos o Galp Share, o nosso foco era o que define se vai ser negativo ou positivo, é a massa crítica que já existe dentro da comunidade. Quando a massa crítica é pequena, é muito caótico e pode ir para um lado para o outro. Né? Então é muito importante manter uma certa massa crítica de, digamos, seguidores mais ou menos fiéis. Isso se consegue com todas essas técnicas que nós já falamos aqui. É muito importante entender essa questão da massa crítica, porque se a massa crítica passa do positivo para o negativo rapidamente, é um tipping point que aí não tem mais fim. Aí se perde tudo. A questão toda é manter um número fiel de utilizadores, de influenciadores, de tudo, para manter a massa crítica ao vosso favor e sempre trazer esses influenciadores para o vosso lado de uma maneira aberta. No caso específico da Galp, foi um dos primeiros grupos criados, se eu não me engano, foi o grupo anti-Galp, se lembra? Né? E a primeira coisa que a Galp fez foi entrar no próprio grupo, discutir, não houve importância nenhuma, o grupo desapareceu, e depois houve alguns comentários negativos, e a própria comunidade falou, olha, vocês viram falando mal da Galp, mas nesse caso específico também está tentando nos ajudar, calem a boca. Não houve interferência nenhuma da Galp, não houve nenhuma tentativa de bloquear, de censurar, que nem falou, nada. Foi só tratado de uma maneira muito direta, muito aberta, e a própria comunidade matou esse comentário negativo e depois nunca mais apareceu nenhum. Por quê? Porque a massa crítica e aquilo que a Galp tinha que dar para essa comunidade valia o esforço de proteger a Galp nesse caso específico. Correto ou não, Antônio? Perguntas?
I have a question for Phil. And I hope that you don't misunderstand me, because I'm a believer of reciprocity. I use it for myself and I use it for my clients. But it's getting harder and harder to give, and the client acknowledge that, because everybody is giving. It's, I guess it's Robert Cialdini, it says, give is like bread or wine. The older it is bread, the older it gets, the harder it gets to get something back, because everyone is starting to give a lot of things. So what do we do besides outstanding information or outstanding data that the clients, I acknowledge that, and I'm in debt with that company, so that we can gain attention from the client. Otherwise, we'll start giving, and no return, because the client already don't return.
I think one of the biggest challenge for us is understanding we don't have to get to have a good experience with the customer. And you're absolutely right. But if you think of what I talked about, the decision cycle, very early in the decision cycle, people don't trust. Don Peppers and Martha Rogers call it trustability. What's the trustability? And in the beginning, maybe we need to rethink some of the things we do to start giving something in the knowledge that they're going to get a personal experience, but we might not get the data we want. And that's where I think the big change is going to come, because you're absolutely right. Each one of us in Western Europe is slammed with 3,000 branding messages every day. Yeah, just here, as I said, there's a brand on the television, there's a brand on the PC, there's another PC. The bottom of your shoes is actually branded with the label, you know, and so this overwhelming give me isn't going to happen. Some of the things we're going to have to do, we're going to have to back off, and we're going to have to say, how do we use our marketing resources carefully, and when is the time to actually offer them something that a particular target group will be interested in? If there's anyone here from IBM, I applaud you. You no longer have to give anything to download a white paper off the IBM website. You just click it and it downloads. Their opinion is, if it's good and it was valuable for you, you will remember where you got it and come back and maybe feel willing to share some more. That's where I think the trend is. It hasn't gotten easier, but I think we first have to wake up.
I use that approach also.
Absolutely,
That's
good.
why I told you, don't misunderstand it.
Yes.
But be careful, because we need to know the right moment, and the information must be outstanding, otherwise.
Absolutely, I agree.
Don't pay attention.
But you've got to realize the vast majority of organizations are still doing that, though, by looking at channels and what are we going to push through the channels and what's the offer through the channels. And the first thing we have to do is get the organization thinking from the customer's perspective. I find that every time I do a workshop like this, you have a fantastic group of people who all of a sudden change their thinking and some ideas come out. And you're absolutely right, there is no answer for the market. However, as we start focusing in on segments, I think there does become some give-to-get mechanisms that can be used more and more.
Don't be discouraged if you start to give and don't get nothing.
Absolutely. That's why I have the first three levels. The first three levels, you're giving and you're not getting anything, but you are making sure they have a personalized experience and they will remember you. And that's, at the end of the day, the first step that we're trying to achieve. Thank you for the question.
Mais questões? Já temos tempo e agenda para mais umas 2, 3 questões. Deu?
Hi, my name is Armando. I like very much your presentations, all of you. Just a point about this concern on the social media, and most companies are really concerned because they don't control the message. I think it's a question of power. In the old days, they have power. They put the message on the mass media and they control everything. At least they thought they control everything. Now they are afraid because they don't control what's happening, and it's a power shift. Concerning technology, I think technology is really the key for this transformation, and it's moving very fast. And I speak for myself, I have the impression that technology is moving faster than our brains, and somehow I get a bit confused on the way. So just a reflection, if you can comment on that.
I heard something wonderful from the Senior Vice President of Commerzbank the other day. He said, 20 years ago we were worried about the government getting all of our data and abusing it. And 10 years ago we were worried about companies getting our data and abusing it. And you know, that's still a concern today, but the real challenge is with the individuals themselves. It's now to the point, and this goes back to the ethics question, we have to protect consumers from themselves and the information that they're providing on all of these channels. because that's where the big challenge is we actually have to start helping them protect themselves. And so I'm with you all the way.
From my point of view, I think since we have the internet, the brands have definitely lost control of their brands. This is a tough word, control. This is not more possible since the internet is there. The information exchange takes place, and I agree with you. Now it goes into a discussion which goes to the first statement which was made regarding the ethics. All companies have, if they start to engage in social media, have a kind of a responsibility. Let's say for the employees and for the specialists which are running the social media engagement for a company, there are some rules of engagement which have to be set up. Rules of engagement for the user, the visitor of the community, as well as for the moderators, which are the employees of a company, which are like the policemen taking care that the rules are followed. Because different areas have also different kind of, let's say, wording which is allowed. I'll make an example. If Harley-Davidson has a community, would have a community forum or an owner group of Harley-Davidson, you can imagine that the wording which is used there, as well as perhaps some pictures, has a completely other quality than that what is on the forum of Kinderschokolade. Because these are two different needs and two different, let's say, places. Therefore, the responsibility is mainly with the person or the organization which puts at disposition this place where people can engage. In this case, a company. And therefore, you need to have these moderators, as I explained it, allowing a few things, but not allowing bad words or too much skin on pictures, etc.
O que acabou de falar, mais ou menos, eu tirei um slide um dia atrás. Parece que está repetindo um slide sobre o que o impacto do telégrafo no mundo. Né? Eu vou colocar um pouco em perspectiva essa questão da evolução tecnológica. Né? Nós sempre centramos a escala do tempo no momento que a gente vive. E achamos que está acelerando, que é tudo complicado, que mudou tudo, que as empresas vão mudar, e que nesse momento já está tudo definido e que não tem mais futuro. Isso aconteceu sempre na história da tecnologia, ainda continua acontecendo. No final do século XIX, o diretor do escritório de patente dos Estados Unidos propôs ao governo fechar o escritório de patente, porque tinha tudo sido inventado, por que precisava continuar gastando dinheiro no escritório de patente? Né? Inventaram máquina a vapor, inventaram teléfono, inventaram telefone, inventaram várias coisas, então vamos acabar, não tem mais nada. Isso aqui é um processo muito longo de mudança tecnológica, muito longo, não vai parar, nem sequer está acelerando. Tem sido assim, nós centramos essa mudança tecnológica no tempo que nós vivemos. Então, ao longo dessa mudança tecnológica, nós vamos ver empresas que vão ser criadas, Google, Facebook, vão ver empresas que vão desaparecer, e o importante é entender esse momento e aí tirar vantagens para abrir empresas, criar novas tecnologias e propor muitas coisas, né? Mas a gente não pode perder a perspectiva ao longo do tempo, né? O tempo que nós estamos vivendo é nem um pouco diferente do que foi há pouco tempo atrás. O impacto do telégrafo no mundo foi muito maior, né, de certa maneira, porque foi o início de tudo, sem o qual não existia internet, e depois o telefone. Grandes empresas como nós conhecemos hoje surgiram nessa época. A única vez que o Thomas Edison acertou numa invenção, fez 1.100 patentes, faliu quase todas, inventou fogógrafo, inventou luz e perdia tudo pelo tempo. O único que ele inventou, quem de vocês aqui leu o Tio Patinhas? Sabe aquele ticker? Foi a única invenção, é do Edison, ele inventou aquilo. Foi a única invenção que ele ganhou dinheiro. Isso permitiu criar o Wall Street. Né? Foi na hora que sincronizou o começo das bolsas com o ticker. Então, isso fez um impacto muito grande. Outra empresa, quem de vocês conhece a Reuters? Todo mundo conhece a Reuters. A Reuters surgiu na época do telégrafo, que a pessoa pensou, cara, não posso usar o telégrafo para mandar notícias em tempo real. A palavra tempo real, real time, foi inventada no telégrafo. Tem documentos da época que falam em tempo real. Né? Então, é só para comentar sobre isso aqui, questão de colocar essa perspectiva, que nós temos que aproveitar o momento, entender as tecnologias, entender as tendências e criar o futuro. O futuro não existe, não tem nada predeterminado, não há um destino nenhum. O que nós temos é que trabalhar aqui e criar o futuro.
Agora mesmo. Estamos no horário já. Você.
Nós fizemos uma procura e uma pesquisa social sobre os nossos oradores e resolvemos surpreendê-los com uma surpresa que eles não sabem. Então, eu vou começar pelo Phil Winters. I'll switch to English, sorry.
Okay.
Phil, we heard that you're a fan of terrain miniatures.
Absolutely.
So,
Brilliant.
we specialized and we gave you...
Handle with care. Social goods inside. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
This was for Tom. Isabel will get. Tom is a professional runner, so we got him a bracelet to place his iPhone.
Brilliant.
Okay. For Ivana, we couldn't bring the Ducati here. It was very heavy. So we got you some nice cigars that we found out that you're a great fan also.
Absolutely. Great. What did it say? A good CRM is like a good cigar.
Any other remark?
Social doesn't kill.
And for Jose is known on the internet as Zeppy2, and then you can explain the reason, so we personalize the shot about Com isto encerramos o evento. Esperemos que tenham gostado. Obrigado a todos por estarem presentes. Obrigado. Thank you all for your presence.